Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off, Wolfpack, on another crazy dive into, well, the conspiracy that just keeps on giving. Of course, we know about Epstein. At this point, it's almost Epstein exhaustion syndrome, EES. And this is exactly what I was told would happen. I was told that what would take place is a scenario where it would take so long and they would drum this out for so long, these files, these back and forths, the false information, the AI online garbage, that by the time the dragnet finally came through with everything, nobody would even care anymore. That was the point. And that's what we're looking at. Let me explain. A number of insiders have talked, and we're going to get into some of the talk, some of this talk. One thing I was told is by the time Jay-Z allegedly has involvement with Epstein and that comes out, that is when things have gone full circle, and that is when you are getting that last bit of sludge, that dragnet at the very least, something that started back in the 70s, hear me out, 70s, that dragnet is going to be fully coming to fruition. Once Jay-Z is allegedly linked to Epstein, that is when we know we're at the culmination of this Epstein exhaustion syndrome. So let's get into the business, because there's so much business going on here. And interviews with Epstein. There's interviews in the files with Epstein, and he says stuff that's very crazy. He talks about, and this is after his conviction in some cases, one guy says, that, do you feel like you're the devil? And Epstein says, well, no, I don't feel like I'm the devil, and he's very well spoken. I'm going to play a few clips about that and get into some of that. It's absolutely clear at this point, in my opinion, with some of these emails, that allegedly cannibalism is involved. Allegedly, there's talk, at least via email, of killing people. And the DOJ just dropped millions. I said it with an millions of Epstein pages. And one scan sheet is a straight up, I don't know how to call it. I mean, this is an aspiring drug menu. We're talking bulk price tiers for alleged contraband. For example, cocaine drops to $65 a gram when buying 500 to 1,000 grams. $61 a gram for 1,000 to 2,000 grams, and down to $57 a gram over 2,000 grams. Bulk pricing. Of course, MDMA is mentioned. Bags at $80 each for 500 to 1,000 bags. $70 each for 2,000 bags. Bulk pricing. Costco drug prices. And it looks like a room service display list. Categories for hallucinogens, stimulants, whether you snort, oral, injection options, delivery hours listed, empathogens. There's even some interesting call-outs. Allegedly, LSD blotter for injection doesn't work as expected. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. The DOJ is saying some of this stuff could be junk or planted, allegedly. Who knows? But what kind of high-level setup, honeypot, runs bulk drug prices and tiers like wholesale pricing at Costco? Allegedly, Epstein Island. Real or planted info. And this is what we're coming back to over and over and over again. There's a Noam Chomsky email with Jeffrey Epstein about Venezuela. This goes way back, way back, way back. Okay. Quick. I've been working on a new book. And I've got 3 working titles. Don't have that figured out yet. It will be for sale by the time the Moon Lake Gathering comes. God willing. Hopefully. And it's going into the harsh realities of the precognitive and sentient intelligence that roams the Uinta Basin landscape and our world. And I believe that these entities control, to some level, a number of human interactions. Now, where things get interesting is this seems to be a ritualistic cult-like endeavor. And it's not Epstein, but it is Epstein. All roads lead to Epstein, but it's not Epstein. Okay? What I mean by that is he is not what we believe he is, or what the majority of the population believe he is. He is, in fact, in my opinion, a construct, something designed to do exactly what it did, and something that worked perfect. Now, with this finished update, with these millions of files released, I think we are finding out that this honeypot worked exactly the way it was designed. At the very least, this honeypot reported things all the way back to the 70s and 80s. I don't know if you've ever heard the Larry King and the Franklin Institute conspiracy. These were topics that were involved in the original, quote unquote, dare I say, Italian flat food gate, without using the word, because if I use the word, they'll ban me. But Italian flat food gate. You can use, usually it has pepperoni on it. The original, delving back into the Franklin Institute, a gentleman named Larry King, not the radio show host. And let me tell you, this Epstein saga is the conspiracy research that keeps on giving. And we are finding out that there's a number of things like emails to Lutnick. I said it. If they're true, I mean, you don't know what's true and what isn't in this day of AI slop. But emails to Lutnick, emails to the Rothschilds, back and forth, emails. And of course, I'm talking about Howard Lutnick, United States Secretary of Commerce. And this is a real deal, if true, correct? Because these new Epstein files name Elon Musk, Bill Gates, other powerful men, allegedly, and if you haven't heard this one, allegedly Bill Gates. Well, there's all kinds of AI fun that talks about it. This is from a meme, again, not real, entertainment purposes only. I'm going to play a little meme here because it's hilarious. Maybe I shouldn't play it, but I will. This is a little meme. Now, it is literally about what is being discussed online when it comes to Bill Gates and, Jeffrey Epstein. Mentions, allegedly, of STDs and heckling when it comes to the fact that Bill Gates allegedly used here, I'm saying the word allegedly, Bill Gates allegedly caught STDs from Russian hookers and may have, to put it bluntly, given this to his wife, allegedly, right? Back to allegedly. No proof of any of this. This is just memes and people and reels and groups and pages. And of course, I'm getting messages like crazy right now in the chat. Okay, let me take a break before we get into everything. If you haven't been to heroparanormal.com, go over there. We have all kinds of stuff available. T-shirts, books, hats. I will get to these guys backstage and some of the messages they're sending me. T-shirts, books, hats. Most importantly, it'll take you to heroparanormal.com and Patreon page. There is a green subscribe button. Smash it. That's your friend. More content is on the other side when you hit that button. There's free memberships as well. Okay. So let's get into Epstein fever here, because this is, and the chat's blowing up, and I promise I'm going to get into this, guys. I promise I'm going to get into this. Also, go to Hero Paranormal on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe. All of those. We're going to have goodies. The goodies are coming. Let's listen. There's a 2-hour interview with Jeffrey Epstein, which is something that goes all the way to the bottom of the Epstein rabbit hole. And it goes into some of these organizations that are involved with things like underground societies or building underground societies. I'm talking about end of the world stuff to advert catastrophe. If anything transpires, this is a way to get away from the end of the world, the apocalypse, whatever. Which is really weird because, even more interestingly, there are those who claim to have been abducted by Jeffrey Epstein and have experiences involving a number of ritualistic practices. There is the almighty strange fact that we have the Barrs. That's a family, a father and son. One got, well, let's back up here. William Donald. Okay, back up. Let me back up. Okay, so the dad gave Epstein the job at a school as a teacher, an aristocratic school, and a math teacher. His son is allegedly the prosecutor that was going to prosecute Epstein, if you believe that sort of thing. We're going to come back around and get into names, times, dates. But if there is an underground society which has underground buildings, cities to advert catastrophe, and Jeffrey Epstein is involved, he is also someone who was involved with an organization involving Bitcoin, wireless infrastructure, and a foundation that has a homeless youth outreach program. They even had a whole Wisconsin, I believe it was in Racine, Wisconsin, an area for homeless organization and homeless kids interested in children, interested in underground infrastructure, interested in some of the craziest stuff you've ever heard of. Things like taking your consciousness and wirelessly beaming it, allegedly through laser beams, into other living entities, organisms. And then there's the dirty Epstein money. I'm going to play... No, it's probably too graphic. It is too graphic. Okay, let me back up. So, we have a scenario. Oh, and there's off-planet stuff as well. There's off-planet stuff. This is some of the most interesting because sexualism and off-planet talk. The man who got Epstein a job as a teacher. This is very important. How did Epstein go from a math teacher to a position at Bear Stearns, right? The guy who got him the job was Donald Barr, B-A-R-R. I can say that. There's no allegedly. It just is what it is. And he's an American educator, writer, and Office of Strategic Services, OSS officer. If you remember the OSS, an administrator at Columbia University before serving as headmaster at the Dalton School in New York City. He also wrote 2 science fiction novels. Okay? United States Attorney General William Barr and physicist Stephen Barr. The United States Attorney General William Barr, former United States Attorney General William Barr, was allegedly the one who was going to prosecute Epstein, according to some. Let's get into his works, specifically why this all paints a very strange picture. He has one book that is literally called Space Relations, and we're talking about sex here. A slightly gothic interplanetary tale. This was written back in 1973. Now, this, you can't make this stuff up. Let me tell you about the plot. And this goes into some of the off-planet organizations that Epstein was involved with. The plot of this book, Space Relations. In the future, humans have formed an intergalactic empire ruled by aristocrats. Sounds interesting. During a time of war with the Plith, that's a type of entity, an empire of ant-like alien bug people, Ambassador John Craig, who is the star of this book, a formerly liberal Earth man in his 30s, is dispatched to strategically important planet Kosar, a human colony that was settled by the Carlyle Society. You've probably heard of the Carlyle Group. And this is important because Thomas Carlyle was a Scottish essayist, historian, and philosopher. They called him the Sage of Chelsea. And he invented what's known as the Carlyle Circle. This is important for a moment because the Carlyle Circle in mathematics, which we all know that Jeffrey Epstein was allegedly a math whiz. We have Eric Weinstein talking about how Jeffrey Epstein really knew about his math. Didn't pretend like he did everything else. He really was following Eric Weinstein's mathematical work at Harvard for a reason. But in mathematics, a Carlyle circle is a certain circle in a coordinate plane associated with a quadratic equation. And this is important because this all comes back to math. So we have the Carlyle Circle, of course, the Carlyle Society in this book, and this was a place out in outer space for exile of political extremists, which was now ruled by an oligarchical high council of 7 nobles, each of whom is in charge of a different domain with its own traditions. Their boredom and absolute power, sounds a lot like Epstein, have driven them to madness, to the point that entry into the empire has been stymied by the man-inhabited planet's treaty clause against alliances with slave-owning societies. Sounds like a lot of rich people that are just doing dirty things. Kidnapping humans to become illegal playthings of the galaxy's super rich. Okay? It goes on, this book. One of these people awakened prisoner to rape a 15-year-old virginal red-headed female captive in front of them. The rapists, I'm reading this from the book, by the way, the rapist's fellow pirates later hear of this and dock his pay as punishment. So we're talking, 15 years old, this is obviously pedophilia, space, enslaved teenagers, and this is the kind of wild stuff in this futuristic book, Space Relations by Donald Barr. Again, back to his son. This is a guy who, his son is a former United States Attorney General, William Barr, and a physicist, Stephen Barr. Again, the Attorney General was supposed to prosecute Epstein at one point, allegedly. And let's get into the other son, Stephen Barr, who is an American physicist, professor emeritus of physics at the University of Delaware, a member of the Bartle Research Institute, theoretical particle physics and cosmology. We're talking pretty wild connections here. Space, pedophilia, legality, school, mathematics, and physics. You don't usually get this on your bingo card. Now, how in the world did a young Jeffrey Epstein make an impression enough to get into this very prestigious school? Keep in mind, most of the former students agree they don't know how he got in, but they said he was very charismatic, even at a young age. He had the world on a string. And they all liked him. He's a likable guy. Again, I don't think he is someone who is who they allege he is. Okay? I know the allegations of him sexually abusing dozens of underage girls isn't popular. But that being said, there's something more to Epstein. This private school in Manhattan with a reputation for attracting talented students with affluent parents. You would expect somebody to be very vetted that works there. But other than charisma and Barr getting him this job, we don't know how this happened. Of course, there's ties of creepiness back then. But at the time, he was not at the center of a high-profile sex trafficking ring, which obviously now he is, even though he's gone, doesn't exist anymore, allegedly. I've always maintained, for the record, I'm going to sound like a complete nut job here. I've always maintained he is still around in some way or another. Keep in mind, I have my reasons. Okay? One particular person, Susan Semel, who taught social studies at Dalton School from 1965 to 1988, wrote a book on the school's history. She says Barr made several unconventional hires during his time as the head of the school, though it's unclear if he hired Epstein. Others have alleged that it was Donald Barr, and that he would hire young people, and not necessarily young people who had a lot of credentials, Semel says. Epstein was 21 when he started teaching at the school and had no college degree. Pretty fascinating. One particular reason this is so fascinating is it's an untold story of how Jeffrey Epstein got so rich. But did he? He was one of the people, he was very, very familiar with how to wire money and move money around. And we're going to get into emails with the Rothschilds that don't make a whole lot of sense and go into a lot of things that have me baffled. Okay? I'm going to tell you, they're mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. Now, where do I go from here? Vanity Fair, March 1st, 2003, had something called The Talented Mr. Epstein. This was published in Society. Now, keep in mind, this was March of 2003. And I'll read a little bit about what it talked about. It talked about his connections with Kevin Spacey, Bill Clinton, how they would fly on his 727, and how Jeffrey Epstein was basically the coolest guy around, the talented Mr. Epstein. Talked about his homes, on the block of 71st Street between 5th and Madison Avenue. I mean, ludicrously wealthy area. Talked about the fact that this was, at least until 1989, the Birch Wathen Private School. And now it is said to be Manhattan's largest private residence at the time. So here we have a guy living in Manhattan's, allegedly Manhattan's largest private residence, a place that was a school. How did he buy a school and turn it into a home? And because it was a school, from what I understand, it allegedly had cameras in every room and bathroom. Absolutely fascinating. And very interesting stuff. Now, the talented Mr. Epstein is more talented than I think anybody's giving him credit for. Apparently, when you would step in, he had African warriors and all kinds of interesting art. And like I said, he would study intelligence quotients, consciousness studies, math, and gravity. Now that could be interesting in and of itself. But let's get into the stuff that blows me away, which is space, underground cities, connection to troubled teens and foundations, and allegedly he's a member of societies that are involved with all of this stuff. Okay, so we know Epstein's not the best guy on the planet, am I right? But how deep does it go? My friend Leo Zagami came out with a book talking about Epstein. And it's called The Rise and Fall of a Frankist Monster. Highly recommend you get that book. He clearly shows a number of things. And we're going to get into stuff that outdoes just about anybody's work. And Leo's done great work for a long time. But he clearly shows how the key men involved with this whole Epstein saga subverted the word of God and claimed to be authority on prophecy, scripture, more or less everything religious. And then they inserted the idea of things like orgies, things like pedophilia, things that are horrible, much like Aleister Crowley, to be used as a process of enlightenment. We see this narrative. We've heard of Sabbatai Zevi and a number of others who have done this thing. Aleister Crowley. This enlightenment would then somehow bring you closer to God in a very inverted way. Obviously, it doesn't work, by the way. Just throwing that out there, my opinion. And they did this anywhere they went. These followers. They embraced the opportunity to practice sexual deviance, and they infiltrated many institutions. You can win a lot of friends by saying, hey, I can enlighten you. You can become fully illuminated. You can do whatever you want, right? Do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. And still you will attain enlightenment. You'll get to know more people. You'll get to be mischievous, the debauchery, the sexual deviance, the infiltration of key institutions, positioning yourself for success. And then we can further these agendas. Dare I say, satanic agendas. From what I understand, and all of the roads I've gone down seem to point, and researchers like Leo Zagami seem to point out that many of these families go way back and they're involved in what we would consider satanic practices. Now, I'm going to go off a little bit here. I'm going to unload something that is deeper, darker, more hideous. I mean, this is worse than frazzle drip from a political and overall landscape view of destruction of our country, okay? The political landscape, the overall destruction of our financial system, specifically going back to 2008. In no uncertain terms, and I have to agree with Jeffrey Epstein here, in no uncertain terms, Jeffrey Epstein maintains in key verbal, cognitive discussions that Bill Clinton, good old Bill, the one that went to the island many times, Bill Clinton, in no uncertain terms, was allegedly, if you had to point to one person and say that person is guilty, even though it doesn't work that way, we all know it doesn't work that way, but if you had to point to one person and say that person is guilty for the 2008 financial collapse, Jeffrey Epstein maintains that that person was Bill Clinton. And I would have to agree, especially when you hear the key points. Why is this worse than frazzle drip? Well, frazzle drip also has to do with the Clinton. We're not going to go down that conspiracy rabbit hole, but definitely give it a Google. Okay, why is this far-reaching, more damaging, more true, and something terrible? Well, many families lost their homes because of it. The 2008 housing crisis. Well, let me explain. The reason Bill Clinton was to blame for this is because he wanted to get elected. And he went to many of the communities, which are usually communities that don't have the highest credit scores. Impoverished communities. Lots of votes there. If you can figure out how to harvest them, right? Lots of votes you can get reelected. If you can figure out how to harvest the votes out of many of these impoverished communities. We've seen Biden doing it, opening the floodgates, opening our borders to let anybody and everybody in. Well, who are they going to vote for when you have a candidate that's letting you in? I'm not going to get political here. But what I am going to say is what Bill Clinton did, allegedly, according to Epstein, is he went to these communities that are mostly renting, right? These people don't have great credit scores. They're mostly renting. And this is tragic. This is devious. This is evil. This is technically horrible. And it caused a financial shut down practically almost. The 2008 housing crisis was a mess. So what he did is he goes to these people, the Hispanics, the blacks typically, it doesn't matter the race. Impoverished communities. Many of these were, in fact, white. Many of them were lower economic status Hispanic, lower economic status African American, lower economic status. Didn't matter. Equal opportunity destroyer. Didn't matter if you were white or any other color. But if you're in a lower income impoverished area, Bill Clinton, allegedly, according to Epstein, goes to these people and says, hey, you don't need to be renting. What you need to do is pull yourself up by your bootstraps and own your own home. That's what you need to do. Keep in mind that in many cases, most cases, almost all these cases, these people don't have the credit scores to get a loan to buy a home because they can't pay their bills, because they don't make enough money to pay their bills, and that's why their credit score is not where it should be. Instead of teaching them how to fix their credit score, make more money, pay their bills, etc., that's not what he did at all. He just basically said, I'll give you this loophole. I can get you in to your own home if you vote for me. Okay, sounds like a really good plan, right? Only problem with it is it's not. What he would do is, oh wow, what is this out front? This is a crazy looking truck. Sorry, it's really loud. I don't know if you can hear that. I've never seen anything like this in my life. And it's leaving. Okay. Thank goodness, that's so loud. So what he did, very, very, very disturbing. I can get you in your own home. I can get you a loan. You can buy your own home. This is going to bring you wealth. Well, he goes to the banks and he says, this is what I need you guys to do. I need you to give these people in these communities loans. The bank says, why would we do that? They don't have good credit scores. We won't get paid back. We will go bankrupt. Now, the true evil is this. According to Jeffrey Epstein, allegedly, Bill Clinton said to them, well, you will do this, or I will charge your institution with discriminatory lending. A crime. And you don't have to say that they have bad credit. He came up with a whole new term. Bill Clinton came up, allegedly, with a whole new term, according to Jeffrey Epstein. And who's going to know better, right? These guys hung out all the time. But this term was subprime lending. These people don't have bad credit. It's just subprime. Not exactly good. Subprime. Okay. Well, that sounds sub-fair, sub-good, sub-helpful. Subprime lending. Solutions. Well, if you go to a bank and you say, yeah, if you don't give these people loans, I, the President of the United States, I'm going to charge you with discriminatory lending, which will end your institution, you're going to give that group a loan. Those people in those communities with subprime credit scores, you're going to give them loans. Loans that they will obviously default on, not paying you back. You will have to pass the buck to other people. It causes a chain of financial disruption and devastation like we saw in 2008. Now, when it comes to that, I agree with Jeffrey Epstein. If true, if his allegations are true against Bill Clinton, that Bill Clinton was the sole person to blame for 2008, which I don't think that's possible to say just one person's to blame. But according to Jeffrey Epstein, if you pointed a gun to his head and he's in a corner and you said, who was to blame for the 2008 financial housing demolition, destruction, he said Bill Clinton. Oh, wow. That sounds pretty dark. That sounds pretty black. Evil. Right? shady. Now, back to Leo Zagami. He's really looked into a lot of these scenarios with people that are in these secret organizations, institutions, or societies that talk to each other. Now, I'm going to talk about a really crazy email, a letter of agreement. I'm just going to read it. This is a letter of agreement, allegedly from all these documents, to Jeffrey Epstein, president. He was president of Southern Trust Company Incorporated, U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas. I won't go into the address, but it's there. Here it is, letter of agreement. Dear Jeffrey, a lot of the times, by the way, the Rothschilds would just called, and I'll talk about which specific Rothschilds. I won't make any blanket phrases because I don't believe in that. But they would call him Jeff, and we'll talk about some of those. But dear Jeffrey, you, on behalf of Southern Trust Company Incorporated, a Virgin Islands corporation, have been collaborating with Ariane de Rothschild on behalf of Edmund de Rothschild, holding SA, collectively the Rothschild Group. Regarding risk analysis, Rothschild Group and the application and use of certain algorithms with respect to the same, quote unquote, in parentheses, specified matters. The purpose of this letter this agreement is set forth and the terms upon which you, on behalf of STC, will continue to work with the Rothschild Group on the specified matters, in parentheses, the work. Goes on. STC shall provide the work as further specified and agreed to between Jeffrey Epstein and Ariane de Rothschild from time to time while this agreement remains in effect. Let me drop down to the fees and expenses. In consideration for the work, the Rothschild Group shall pay the following to STC. For work specifically relating to outstanding matters between Edmund de Rothschild Holding SA and the United States, $25 million. Let's get down to the confidentiality. You and STC agree that any and all confident information or proprietary information identified as such by Rothschild will basically not be talked about. Okay, so these back to the black ops of Jeffrey Epstein. This is just one example. There are others. My favorite email to Jeffrey Epstein from A. de Rothschild. This was allegedly March 18th, 2014, about 8:55 p.m. Hi, Jeff. Because that's, when the Rothschilds email me, they just call me by my first name. I'm joking, but that's the kind of relationship we're talking. So this email says, hi, Jeff, first name basis. Very long day sitting on bank board. Numbers are okay, but not satisfactory to me. And I am putting them under pressure to be more innovative about asset management funds while restructuring. I'm in a dinner with a client, fed up, exclamation point. I miss our talks. I hope you're well. We'll be at home tomorrow night. Will you be free? And let's discuss Ukraine. Ukraine upheaval should provide many opportunities. Many. Now, this was the response from Jeffrey Epstein. She finished with, and let's discuss Ukraine. Jeffrey said, Ukraine upheaval should provide many opportunities, many. Now, this was March 18th of 2014, which means they were aware of what was coming, or dreaming it up, or part of it, or at least had the insight Many opportunities. So let me walk you through something I find fascinating. What exactly happened in Ukraine in 2014, which evolved the CIA? Now, Ukraine in 2014 had programs which involved the CIA. These programs involved the CIA because they were changing the structure of Ukraine's government, allegedly. This is how the CIA helped Ukraine pull away from Russia. In 2014, it wasn't just a random year. This evolves over time. 2014, there was a revolution of dignity, it was called. The CIA began a deep, long-term partnership to rebuild Ukraine's intelligence services. It's long been held that Jeffrey Epstein was an intelligence asset. What did the CIA do? Well, it included training, funding, construction of secret forward operating bases along the Russian border to modernize Ukrainian capabilities to Western standards. I don't have to say allegedly. That's out there. Now, the key aspect here is the intelligence modernization. If Jeffrey Epstein was an intelligence asset, and the reason I say that is because many of his alleged victims or accusers believed he was. They would try to run from him. In many cases, they would get away. They would travel to other countries. And without fail, Jeffrey Epstein would find them, or his people would find them, and bring them back. How would they find them? There was also rumors in the rumor mill, the grapevine, whatever you want to call it, that he was, in fact, an intelligence asset. That he had operational support. And that he had strategic partners in intelligence. Now, to what scope? It seems to be worldwide. We've seen the allegations that he had multiple passports from multiple countries, namely places like Saudi Arabia, where you would ask yourself, how? How would he have a passport to Saudi Arabia? Of course, the United States, of course, the list goes on and on. Now, something important to note is that here in Ukraine, the intelligence operation I'm discussing, after the, what did they call it? The revolution of dignity, was deep. This existed alongside and was often separate from public U.S. efforts, which included supplying military aid and conducting training for conventional forces. So the CIA helped Ukraine pull away from Russian dominance. It was something that a lot of conspiracy theories about how the CIA orchestrated Ukraine's breakaway from Russia have been met with criticism. Now, there is some stuff out there that's eyes only, okay? And I'm not going to get into that. But late 2013 in Kiev, a lot was going on, and there was a lot of CIA boots on the ground. So when you put together intelligence, secret forces, assets, people finding everything out, people like Jeffrey Epstein who knew everybody and everything, you start to wonder if there was a deep partnership. Maybe this honeypot was gathering information from everywhere and bookmarking it. Now, we know for a fact that there was a mission to persuade American intelligence to help Ukraine by people. Think of how much money you could make if you knew that a war was coming. This is totally separate from the 2008 housing crisis, for example. If you knew that was coming, you'd make a ton of money. But if you knew a war was coming, you would be like, holy crap. Me, you, all of our buddies can become super wealthy. We just need to leverage ourselves, probably with connections to the bank, in a way that we can turn this destruction into income. Well, that's what's being alleged by a number of conspiracy theories. And yes, there is the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And in Ukraine, they have multiple intelligence agencies, and the closest equivalent to the United States CIA, Foreign Intelligence, is called the SZRU or the SBU, Security Service. The SZRU is the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine for overseas operations, more like the CIA. And then they have the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, for internal security, counterintelligence, and counterterrorism. So, yeah, pretty main. The relationship with the CIA has been a deep, secret partnership that has been rebuilding and training them since, guess what date? 2014. So we have this email talking about, with a Rothschild talking to Epstein, first name basis, buddy, talking about, hey, there's many opportunities coming up in Ukraine, many opportunities. So this is really interesting. And I believe that we are going to have a lot more claims come out and resurface. Some of the most interesting are Epstein's interests in fringe science. He was interested in a number of fringe sciences. I'm going to pop a little image here up on the screen and I'll be right back. Okay, now there's Sasha Riley. If you have heard of this guy, it's a developing story and is being verified as we speak. Part of the Epstein files released by the DOJ back up Sasha Riley's audio. The audio is something else. Let me turn it on here. I'm going to see if I can chime this audio in. Now, Sasha alleges a number of things. And listen to this. Listen to this. Oh, it's been removed. This happens. Okay, so I'm sitting here thinking to myself, how could this get removed? But this is happening with this type of stuff all the time. There are operations removing this. I had the FBI audio, and it's now gone. But let's get back to it. There's another woman who has verified some of what Sasha was saying. Sasha Riley, his dad is named Bill Riley, and he allegedly also has some information. Now, every accusation that's being made cannot be verified. That's why the Department of Justice, the FBI, and this investigation continues to scan through all this evidence. It would be weird, in my opinion, because allegedly this person testified to members of Congress, gave names and dates that are easily tracked, gave names of a commander, and then there's Facebook pics that allegedly prove some of this stuff. His dad exists and has a wide open Facebook page, Bill Riley. There's the fact that anyone who has ever survived abuse and sees this. Well, let me back up. Because there are those that are saying it's all confabulated. But the allegation is that if you haven't looked into Sasha Riley, that there are snuff films. And this idea has been around for decades, that these snuff films exist and that some people are into them, that there are torture parties. This person alleges that he was, for example, I've heard the audio, sat on top of, choked out, told he was going to get killed, and then brought back, choked out a dozen times, I'm not 100% sure, but that this was part of the game, right? And if people aren't believing that there are these torture parties, hunt parties, there's something called the Human Safari in Sarajevo, where politicians and elites were allegedly given guns and able to shoot people, civilians running around in the streets. Look up Human Safari in Sarajevo. It's pretty crazy. And it sounds insane. But if you if you listen to the interviews with former FBI agents and some FBI agents that are still on, this type of human compromise is some sort, or at least it appears allegedly to be some sort of currency, specifically to elites. There are allegations that celebrities are involved. People like Neil Patrick Harris. Of course, we remember Isaac Cappy outing people like Seth Green. That allegation. So there are allegations, not to mention the whole Tom Hanks allegation, which is absolutely insane, that Tom Hanks is involved. This is not been adopted into any of the files I've seen. But there are some pretty outlandish things that are involved. I wouldn't be too terribly surprised if Sasha Riley's claims are true. But I need further evidence, so I can't get behind it. What I can tell you is that some of these elites, if they are in fact allegedly shooting pedo snuff films or engaging in torture parties, are doing so for power, to use this as a trap so that when they need a favor, they can ask these people for the favor, and it's just a given. There's also something called the Neil Patrick Harris and the Amy Winehouse meat platter. Now, this is something else. Neil Patrick Harris and Amy Winehouse meat platter is a theory. Let me turn this off. Is a theory that's come about from a lot of different sources. In 2011, actor Neil Patrick Harris and his husband, David Burtka, faced backlash for a Halloween party decoration that featured a meat platter designed to resemble the deceased singer Amy Winehouse. The display was a platter, labeled "The Corpse of Amy Winehouse." Now, this gets back to spirit cooking, of course, Marina Abramovic, and back to Jay-Z. Jay-Z has pretty much made out, like, in a entertainment dancing way with Marina Abramovic in video. And this was for entertainment purposes only, allegedly. But they are fast friends. They are good friends. According to everybody that knows them, Marina Abramovic and Jay-Z are friends. Marina Abramovic was the alleged Satanist and artist. Currently, believe it or not, the head of education for Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken, or has a position with the education system in Ukraine. Back to the weird emails. But the display of Amy Winehouse, to come back to what we were originally talking about, the corpse of Amy Winehouse was designed to look like a decomposing, bloody body on an autopsy table, featuring her signature beehive hairdo, tattoos, and a cigarette in her mouth. The contents, the food spread, consisted of beef ribs, pulled pork, and chicken sausage in a spicy sauce. The party took place 3 months after Winehouse passed away. And the context was this was in bad taste. But I think there's more to it. And many other people do too. The act of spirit cooking could literally be a ritual. And what I mean by that is Marina Abramovic's spirit cooking 1996 performance art piece is what she called it. Let me get a sip of coffee because I'm kind of drying out here. The art piece, Spirit Cooking, involved a cookbook with poetic, occult-themed instructions. Allegedly, according to some conspiracy theorists, it was a step-by-step satanic ritual. It uses imagery, pig's blood, intimacy, spiritual states, and critics interpreted much of it as a dark ritual. Abramovic, of course, said it was poetic performance art. Let's get into the detail of why this could be magical. As we know, a voodoo doll, when you poke it with a needle, you're not actually poking that person, it's symbolic. When you do ritual magic, it is symbolic. Many of these dark rituals are symbolic. Much of this magic is symbolic. So, conjuring spirits or worshiping devils is technically symbolic. And if it is symbolic, isn't that enough? That's the question. I'll let you sit with that one. We're going to delve deeper into this. I know it's exhaustive, the Epstein thing. One fascinating thing that Epstein says in an interview, an amazing interview with Steve Bannon, 2 hours long. I've listened to it. I highly recommend you listen to it. I will find a link and put it up if it's still there. Everything's disappearing on me. But he says 1 divided by 0 equals the boogeyman. And what he means is math can't account, even high calculus, can't account for the mysterious unknown. Because, as an example, if you take a step, you're 2 feet away from a wall, and you take a step half the distance to the wall each time, and you are given an infinite amount of steps to take, you'll never reach the wall, because each time you step towards the wall, you step halfway towards it. So technically, you would never actually reach the wall. But mathematically, you would have to. Well, 1 divided by 0 equals the boogeyman because technically you should be able to divide something like 1 by 0, at least theoretically. And technically, if you're walking towards a wall and you walk halfway towards it each time, you should eventually get to the wall. However, in the prompt, if we delve into AI, or in the instructions of going halfway to the wall, you never reach the wall. What are we left with? Mystery. Again, epic mystery. Epic mystery surrounds Epstein, and I believe it will continue to surround Epstein. I believe Epstein's consciousness is still among us in some way, shape, or form. I don't think things are the way we are told they are, and I think that everything is moving as expected, right according to plan. Thanks so much for listening in. Please slide on over to HeroParanormal.com, smash the green subscribe button, or buy something over at the shop. Like, share, and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. And don't forget to follow via Instagram and Facebook. I love you guys. Have a blessed day. Keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Esoteric Research Organization. Hero Paranormal always setting up the pace, man. Crop circle tipping, Illuminati still tripping. Making those ears perk up, gonna make you question your earth. You better. Mystery bloodlines and secret secret society. Creepy shapeshifter says, come sit beside me. Yeah, cozy on up. So what's with all this spiral, acting like UFOs? Say what? So people in Space Wolf tiptoe through the dark, third eye blinding, tune in and blast off, blast off. Blast off, baby.